middle schoolers and essays is like trying to get a cat to take a bath, right? It's possible, but you're gonna be in for a wild ride. Plus, let's be honest, when students try to write an essay, it's tedious, it's time consuming, and they have to use their brain, God forbid, to find strong evidence and then actually justify it. Most of them would much rather be doing something that requires, zero brain power. So in the spirit of enjoying these last few months of school, we're bringing you a series of 4 videos all about fun projects that you can do with your students to keep them engaged and still maintain that rigor. From visual essays, which we'll talk about today, to fun research projects, Genius Hour, and more. And if you happen to catch these videos at some other point in the school year, we promise all of these ideas are 100% still applicable. Okay, so in today's video, we're focusing on using visual essays to create a unique writing experience that your students will actually really enjoy. And what's great about visual essays is that you can use them for so many different purposes. And I want to give you some ideas of how you can use visual essays that you might want to consider just like bringing into your teaching repertoire. So one of the ways that you can do it is as a final assessment after a class novel or a short story. You can use it as a project following literature circles, as an independent reading project for your students, and as a collaboration activity with a partner. Now, whether or not your students have experience writing what we call a response to literature, that's just our fancy term for a text-dependent essay, a visual essay is the perfect practice for that type of text-dependent writing. So you want to keep that in mind. Now, before we get started, be sure to hit subscribe where you're watching this video for more videos like this one. And if you found this video helpful, please share it with your fellow middle school ELA teacher friends. All right, so the type of essay that I'll walk you through in this video incorporates all of the elements of our EBW approach, which is the writing approach that we teach here at EB Academics. So this particular graphic essay that I'm going to walk you through includes a tag and a summary, a claim, premises, introduction to evidence, evidence, justification, restated claims and premises, and mic drop sentences, but it does it in a visually engaging way. Plus, something else that's really cool about writing an essay this way is that students can then present their work to their peers and receive positive feedback from an audience in a much more engaging way than having students just switch essays and read each other's just regular papers, which can be really boring, to be completely honest with you. Now, I also want to point out that even if you aren't using our EBW approach, you can absolutely still use what I'm going to talk about in your classroom. You would just have your students focus on whatever essay components or terminology that your school uses. And if you are using the EBW approach and you're an EB teacher, we actually already have a done for you visual essay project inside your EB teacher dashboard, but this just walks you through how to do it anyways. And what makes this essay assignment so much more engaging is that instead of students just typing their essays in a traditional fashion, students will instead design a Google Slides presentation that includes all of those writing elements that I talked about earlier, tag, summary, claim, etc. And I want you to picture the final project looking like a simplified graphic novel. So it's a really cool final product that your students get to create. Now, while this activity works best using Google Slides, you can also have students use a physical piece of paper, and I'll walk you through how to set that up at the very end of this video. Okay, before I show you exactly how to set this up, I do want you to keep in mind that you'll want to come up with an essential question for students to answer, because their answer will be their claim and ultimately their essay for their visual essay. Now, what's cool about this is that you can choose one essential question for the entire class, or you can give students options to pick from. It's totally up to you. And if you're using this activity for literature circles or independent reading, it's helpful to keep the question that you give students very, very general because you'll be using different pieces, different works. So I want to help set you up for success here, and I want to give you a few essential question ideas for you to use. So number 1, what important theme does this book convey? Number 2, what is the most important lesson that the main character of this book learns? Number 3, what is the most significant change that the main character of this book demonstrates? And number 4, what is the most important life lesson that readers can learn from this story? So utilize one of those to make your life a little bit easier and just use one of those essential questions. Now, once you've assigned your essential question, explain to students that they will be creating a Google Slides presentation with a total of 4 to 5 slides. Now, I say 4 to 5 slides because each slide will represent a paragraph of a multi-paragraph essay. And if you teach your students to write a 5-paragraph essay, you would have them complete 5 slides. But if you teach a multi-paragraph essay format, you might allow students to include anywhere from 4 to 5 or perhaps even 6 slides. So you have that flexibility in that, so just keep that in mind. All right, so let's dive into the visual essay and break down what's included on each slide. Slide number 1, you guessed it, is the introduction. Now for this slide, students will take a picture of the book's cover and upload it into this slide. And the image should really take up the majority of the slide if possible. Students will then create multiple text boxes on top of the image, and they'll type in the essential question, a tag, which stands for title, author, genre, a summary for their book, and their claim. And their claim, again, is the answer to the essential question. So students can place these text boxes wherever they think it's most visually pleasing, and they're just putting that on that first slide. Now, slides 2 through 4 are the body paragraphs. And these slides are where students are answering the essential question, right? They're supporting their claims. So they'll need a premise, they'll need evidence and justification. So students will take a picture of a page from their book that contains a quote or evidence that answers that essential question and supports their claim. Now, the image should take up most of the slide, and students should highlight that actual quote from that image. Then students will create text boxes. One will be for a premise, one will be for a phrase to introduce the evidence, one will be, around the evidence itself that's highlighted already, and then the final text box is for the justification, where they explain how all of that evidence supports the premise and how all of this ultimately supports the claim. Then finally, you can have students upload a couple small images to the slide. These can be clip art that they find, images that they create, whatever they decide. You want to allow them to be creative if they want to be here. Now, a quick note regarding the images that students might include on this slide. You can share with your students that they can consider images that do the following, right? Maybe it represents the mood of this section of the story, or maybe they're highlighting a topic from this section of the story. Perhaps the image depicts the main character, or relates the premise to the evidence, or it depicts the setting of this section of the story. Allow them to be creative here. Now, again, what I just described would be for slides 2 through 4. So that means students are essentially creating one slide for each body paragraph of their essays. Each slide is going to have different premises, different evidence, different justification, and of course, different pictures and images. Then on that final slide, slide 5 or slide 6, however many paragraphs you're having your students do, students will then create their conclusion. So on this slide, they should create 3 text boxes. One is for a transition and to restate their claim. One is for a spot to summarize their evidence, and one is for that mic drop sentence that explains a lesson that leaders can learn from the book, or like a big takeaway. So again, on this final slide, students can include 2 images to make this slide visually appealing. And for this particular slide, some images that students could consider would be an image that represents an idea from their claim, or an image that represents an overall topic for the story, or reflects an important setting or scene from the story. Or perhaps it's an image that represents their mic drop sentence, or represents the message to the reader. So really allow them to be creative with that image that they're including. You'll notice that this is such a great way for our students to showcase their creativity. It provides them a different medium than a standard essay to share their knowledge and show you their ability to think critically about a text that they've read. So if you want students to do this project on a paper rather than on the computer, most of the directions will remain the same. So instead of having students create their presentations on the computer, you'll have students gather up pieces of paper, right? And what they put on each piece of paper remains exactly the same as what I just described to you as the Google Slides version, but their goal is to make it visually appealing. So think like thought bubbles and drawings. It's not just sentence after sentence in little sections on that piece of paper. And then students might want to draw images on their pages, or they can print images and cut them out and glue them on rather than using that digital clip art. So it's totally up to you. And finally, I love this part too, is if you want, you can have students present their work. And in order to help the audience stay engaged when you're doing this, you can have students take notes on their favorite parts of each presentation and then share those notes with the presenters afterward. Now, the beauty of this visual essay is that students are still meeting all of those writing standards and gaining valuable writing practice, but it doesn't necessarily feel like they're writing an essay. Those artistic components and the fact that they are not writing like standard paragraphs makes it feel a little bit more like a project and allows you to switch things up a bit, which I absolutely love. So this is an awesome alternative to a traditional essay, and it can really be assigned at any time of the year.